Yuka, staying in the US, Donald Trump doubling down on his trade policy after the Supreme Court struck down his so-called Liberation Day tariffs on most of America's trading partners.
Well, Sharon, President Trump has warned countries around the world to abide by any trade deals they had reached over the past year and not to, quote, play games with the Supreme Court's decision, saying such action would be met with higher tariffs. The European Union, however, has decided to hold off on ratifying its agreement with the US while waiting for clarity. Luke Schrager reports.
Now facing a fresh set of 15% US tariffs, Europe wants clarity over the trade deal it struck with Washington last year, which it's now holding off on ratifying.
A deal is a deal. Both sides have agreed to, and indeed have a duty to honour their part of the agreement we made with the US. So now we are simply saying to the US, it's up to you to clearly show to us what path you are taking to honour the agreement.
With the US Supreme Court striking down existing tariffs, the White House pivoted to a global blanket duty of 15% under a different legal framework, one that would come in on top of certain already existing levies and make it more expensive for countries than those that didn't even have trade deals agreed. In the case of the European Union, that could mean up to 17 or 18% on its goods rather than the 15% negotiated. For the US, though, it's just a matter of legal footwork and insisting that tariffs aren't going away. Its trade representative called on nations to stick to the deals they'd made.
We're going to conduct investigations that can allow us to impose tariffs if it's justified by the investigation. So we expect to have continuity in the President's tariff program. We know that these laws work, they're tried and true, and so we'll have continuity. The policy hasn't changed, just the tools have changed.
The new tariffs, however, come with a 150-day time limit built in, with US congressional approval needed to extend them, something Donald Trump declared over social media on Monday that he simply didn't need.
And Yuka, how have the markets been reacting then?
Well, the US dollar dipped and safe haven assets like gold jumped after President Trump ramped up his tariff threats. Wall Street's main indexes all ended the day sharply lower, as you can see, with the Dow Jones losing more than 800 points for the day.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration already collected well over $100 billion in tariffs now deemed unlawful, while US companies benefited from the president's deal-making.
Deal-making indeed. Well, among the biggest winners is Boeing. The plane maker has been facing headwinds, but last year it surpassed its rival Airbus in new orders for the first time in 7 years. Boeing's annual net orders rose to 1,075. That's up from 377 the previous year, while Airbus received 889 new orders. That's largely thanks to massive orders from airlines in countries like Qatar, South Korea and Vietnam that were billed as part of wider trade deals their government struck with Washington. More broadly, US companies secured foreign government procurement contracts totaling $244 billion last year, nearly tripling from 2024. Now, deals assisted by the Commerce Ministry were worth around $30 billion in 2019, and despite rising after the COVID crisis, were way below $100 billion. So that was really a standout, a significant rise there.
And meanwhile, authorities in Panama, Yuka, they've taken control of 2 key ports from Hong Kong company amid pressure from the United States.
Well, on Monday, the Panamanian government issued a decree ordering its maritime authorities to occupy 2 ports at either end of the canal. The 80-kilometre waterway connecting the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans is mainly used by the US and China. And for the US, it's a crucial transit route with 40% of its container ships passing through it. Now, the canal's 2 ports have been operated by Hong Kong's C.K. Hutchinson since 1997, but US President Donald Trump has been accusing China of, quote, running the Panama Canal. In late January, Panama's Supreme Court annulled the Chinese firm's operating concessions as unconstitutional. Last year, Hutchinson agreed to sell the 2 ports to a consortium led by US investment bank BlackRock, but the deal stalled due to intervention from the Chinese government.
Finally, here in France, the annual farming show is underway, but the atmosphere is very different this year.
Well, this year, for the first time in its history, there are no cows because of recent outbreaks of lumpy skin disease. That brought more malaise to the French farming sector, already frustrated with a recently concluded trade deal between the European Union and South America's Mercosur bloc. After President Emmanuel Macron's visit at the weekend, the agriculture minister spoke at the venue today, saying she hoped a promised new emergency law for the sector could be enacted by next year. She said France should use the iconic farm fair as a springboard to try and boost its competitiveness. Let's take a listen.
China has increased per capita funding for its agricultural policy by 40% since 2014, the United States by 86% and Russia by 15%. At this rate, maintaining our competitiveness no longer requires a jolt of effort. It needs a miracle.